Welcome to the Builders of Authority podcast, a show committed to helping you build authority for your brand. In the realm of business and personal branding, authority stands as a cornerstone. Authority isn't built overnight, it's built over time. So join us as we build something remarkable together. And now, here's your host, Adam McChesney.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Builders of Authority podcast. We have an in-person episode today at Adventure Unknown. I'll start by saying that I strongly dislike financials, accounting, taxes, a lot of the stuff that we'll probably talk about today. Today's guest, though, is truly an authority and subject matter in this space. He and I connected online a little over a year ago. He then came to our second Builders of Authority event last June. Since then, we've had the opportunity to get to know each other even better in the process of rebuilding and relaunching his website. He is someone that truly loves what he does and is someone that I'm glad to have in my corner. I connect him with a lot of people. He connects me with a lot of people, and ultimately a great resource to be able to have in your corner. My guest today is Payton Gillis. He is the owner of Tax Game Plan. Payton, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'm excited. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Of course.
Yeah,
what do you think
awesome.
About Adventure Unknown?
Yeah, this is awesome. I've been wanting to get out here because we're out in Lake St. Louis, so I'm about a 40-minute drive from out here, but I know several of the guys in the club and stuff, and they're like, get out here to an event and stuff, and I'm like, I've needed to. So yeah, it's awesome. I've seen the photos and videos, and yeah, it's cool to check out.
Love it, man. Well, tell people a little bit about who you are. I know you don't just have Tax Game Plan now; you got some other things you're working on. So kind of go through it all.
Yeah. So we run our main, what we do is I run a boutique tax planning CPA firm. So I'm a CPA and certified tax planner. And really what we do is we work mainly with small business owners, real estate investors, and professionals. And then we also work well with high earner W-2 people who kind of want to do something a little bit more than the basics. And we advise them. Every client of ours has to have some level of consulting. So they have to meet with us at least, the very least we have people annual. Most people we're pushing towards semi-annual at this point just because it's a long time to not talk. When we go that long. And so we do consulting, we take care of their compliance, we're full service, so we can do accounting, bookkeeping, any of those needs they have, anything below an audit. We don't do audits, we would refer that out, but most of those accounting services we can do. But really we want clients coming in because they're looking to reduce taxes, to optimize their tax situation, and then we can consult with them. We can put together and implement strategies with them when they're ready for them and when they make sense for them. And then they know we're handling their compliance and everything that they need on their returns.
And how did you get started kind of into the entrepreneurial space?
Yeah, it's interesting. So like when I first went to school, I always said like I was going to own my own firm, own my own thing, or whatever I did, I was going to get a skill and like be an entrepreneur. And, I kind of forgot about it. It was like, I got out, did accounting the whole time. I went to public accounting and worked for a small firm, then a little bit bigger firm. And then I went to the corporate tax world for a while. And I came back to the public field. And then that's when I kind of matched everything up. I actually minored in entrepreneurship for maybe 2 semesters until, I kind of figured out that classes on entrepreneurship weren't that beneficial. Yeah. It was kind of, if it's more like just getting out and doing it. And so when I kind of got that itch back, and it really kind of started when I had seen enough over those years to see, okay, the public accounting model is built like this. Like everything's built hourly. They crank out as many tax returns as they can. For a lot of what they're doing is for small business owners a lot of times. And, they have W-2s, retirees, everyone else. But, it's built on this hourly model of, hey, that takes you an hour to do it. It needs to take you an hour to do it. That takes 30 minutes to review it. It needs to take you 30 minutes to review it because this is your hourly rate and this is what we're billing the client. And within that, there's not much time built to actually think about it, right? It's just like, do it. And people's situations change and stuff. So, when I looked at spent some time in the corporate tax world for US Bank and then MetLife, it's a whole different system of how they think about taxes. The hours matter and things like that. They want to know what you're doing, but more or less it's, what are we doing? How are we planning for this? Where can we reduce this? And they create entire subsidiaries and everything else to plan for these. So when I came back to public accounting and everything in 2019, after a couple of years, and I was like, man, this is really I'm helping or trying to help clients hire their kids and, do different things, get into real estate, do what they can do to really take advantage of this. But I really can't they're not doing it because like I'm telling them about it, but they don't, like you said, most people, it's not their thing. So like, they're like, I would gladly pay you to just go do this. But there's a missing link of the firms aren't spending the time and they aren't doing it. So that's when I kind of got the idea. I got into tax planning when it's called certified tax planner basically, but it's just a little added accreditation that you can get that kind of shifts your mindset into thinking more strategy and planning wise. And I did that. And then that was early in 22, kind of took a couple clients on the side a little bit while I was still working at the firm, and then fully launched and moved off of them. And it was about August of 2022, I think, that I left. And so, I just knew what I wanted to do was going to be an uphill battle. The accounting firms are very old school, and what I was wanting to do, there are modern ones, there are other firms doing this kind of a model, but they're few and far between, mostly ran by, probably younger guys and things like that. And, so that was part of it. The other part that I kind of realized at that time was the younger generation coming up. As I was in my early 30s, our friends were getting to points where they had disposable income. They were wanting to do a little bit more than like retirement accounts, HSAs, like the low hanging stuff. And they were coming to me asking. So I was networking and building my team with advisors and like, hey, here's a good real estate group to go out to. Here's a good, person to connect with on that strategy. And in doing that, I kind of had started to make some of those and thought like there's another world here that we can get into. And then I was watching at the firm I was at, like the younger, the 20 to 30 year olds just leave because, you spend like 5 years to get a degree. You take a very hard exam that usually lasts you a year and a half to 2 years, like to pass the 4 parts of the CPA. And then they're like, well, you can go work 70 plus with a deadline driven, like stressful job, and make, I don't know, maybe 60K starting out. And they're like, yeah, but I could just go into IT and make 100 and like not have to do this. I could go into a different field. And so once they realize that, they just, that's what they leave, or they go to corporate accounting or finance or something else. And, at the time, and it's still a little bit like this, but the partners, they don't really see it yet because there's enough kind of middlemen keeping everything afloat. And that's kind of what I saw. And I was like, yeah, but they're just complaining but that's not, if they don't want to do it, I understand. Like I did it, but I can't say I would have still done it if I know what I knew now. So those all kind of led me to be like, well, I've kind of built up my own network. I think I could do this and that. And then worst case, there's a big demand for accountants right now. So my kind of floor was like, if this fails, I can call a recruiter.
I can always do that.
And so that's what led me to it overall, I think, to get out on my own.
That's awesome. And then in terms of some of the other stuff you've been working on, I know obviously you have a niche focus of ideal clients that obviously you mentioned real estate stuff. Talk to us about some of the other things you've kind of added on and built out as well.
Yeah. So we've been kind of working on a pet project lately that launched maybe a month and a half ago and really is just getting taken off. So what I find is that we work very well with real estate investors. We look for areas and we work within the tax code of things. There are loopholes and things to utilize. And industry-wise, business owners, there's many more loopholes than W-2 guys because the IRS and the states, they want people to own businesses. It helps the economy. And where there's a ton of loopholes is in real estate because they want people to buy stuff. It spurs the economy. It's good for GDP. So like they want you to get into real estate. And so a lot of our clients are successful real estate investors or small business owners that have some real estate or W-2s that are getting into real estate, whether actively, passively, however they're doing it. And what I was finding is we were becoming a very trusted vendor, and we have become of a lot of these high-level successful real estate individuals and groups and things like that. And because of that, we get a lot of calls and a lot of people that are like, hey, just starting out, buying a couple properties or whatever they've done. And they're not great fits for us necessarily, but their accountant that they have isn't helping them. So like they're like, he doesn't understand it. And I'm like, yeah, but he's not going to. I know that model. He shouldn't. You may be his only client doing this, like, or the firm or whoever. And so I'm like, so the vision, we started REI Tax University, and it's a community, and it's meant to help real estate investors and professionals optimize their taxes and understand and optimize taxes. And within that vision, what I tell people is, right now we're at 21 members, like kind of a similar type of a thing to your mastermind group, but for real estate investors, maybe W-2 people that want to get into it. So, if you're like, hey, where do we go to save taxes? We've done all the little stuff, or we kind of understand, we want to do something different. That's who it's really meant for. And at the end of the day, what it's meant to do, my long-term vision with it, if you think of the vision of helping as many real estate investors save and optimize taxes. That's not Payton or Tax Game Plan helping them do it. We're limited in capacity, right? Yeah. So like we love doing stuff for people and taking on clients, but at a certain point, we're not trying to grow just to grow. Yeah. And our fees don't always make sense for everyone. And I want to still help them and get them set up right. I don't want to see them like do things wrong and then, be in trouble or have a big tax due that they don't need to have due. So the ultimate long-term goal with REI Tax University is really get the real estate investors and professionals into it's a monthly subscription to be in it, but we've created YouTube videos and resources and real estate templates, like all the things that you might need. So if you're thinking of like the auto deduction, travel deductions, cost segregations, bonus depreciation, a lot of these things that you may hear about come up in real estate or even business, you can come to this group and get the real like details from a qualified CPA who knows what they're doing. We'll have office hours, case studies, other things that you can jump on. Yep. And then ultimately we plan to bring in accountants, and other accountants. And there's a lot of accountants at these firms. Like I've talked with one just yesterday who's like wants to leave and does real estate and like doesn't want to do that path. And the goal is to build them up and to be like, hey, you guys come in subscription, you can help lead office hours, you can help do stuff. And just from that, you're going to naturally match up, with people. And as you get going, like we pass those people on now to other accountants that aren't good fits for us. And, maybe they're easier fees. Maybe they don't require as much consulting as we do. Maybe they do tax prep only. And so some of it is like, hey, we want to connect you with qualified accountants. So part of it's going to be qualifying those accountants. And that way, if you come into the group and if you're working with someone from that they at least have been, educated. Now, if you guys match up as far as a relationship goes, that's a different story. But it's from as much as we can do, we're going to provide resources to help train those accountants as well and things like that. So that's the long-term vision. But again, that's more of a, some days that feels like a pipe dream, right?
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I think like one of the things that I've seen you and see it play out, because I know we first talked about you building out this project and all these different things. And when you and I first met, you're like, hey, here's who our ideal client is, right? Here's what they do for a living. If they have real estate, here's where they, all those types of things. So you got very, very clear on your ideal client and also said, but we can't help everybody, right? Yeah. We can't help the person that's just getting started or interested in getting started. But kind of like with our community is like we can have the community, the mastermind, the entry level thing that they're still in our ecosystem, or if it's our free Facebook group or wherever, and they can always work themselves up to be able to be our ideal client. And that can happen over time, but they're at least still in our ecosystem. So I think that's very pivotal. But my question to you would be like, from a lot of the firms that are out there, from what I understand is most of them are just serving anybody and everybody versus being super niche down, customer centric. Would you agree with that? And kind of what is the philosophy around that?
Yeah, I would say so. I think, I have a big philosophy on like close rates and sales and things like that. And I think most CPA firms are closing way too many people. And that's the problem, because then the people that they are really trying to help, they don't have the capacity or time to. So you can't help anyone because you're just, and then people get frustrated. So, I would say the number one thing we hear of new clients coming in is, I don't have any correspondence with my account. I can't get a hold of him. I can't, so client experience and like the accountants are smart. Like it's not that they're doing wrong. Like we'll see that every once in a while, but it's more or less like that, the accountant just doesn't have the time to do it. And then, other times they're like, well, I don't know, they told me this and and then we'll show them that where, if it was wrong and like, why'd they tell me? I'm like, we feel like we have to give you an answer. You know what I mean? Like if you feel like if I don't, like I'm supposed to know this and everything. And so it's hard to give them an answer of, hey, let me get back to you on that, or let's look into it and things like that. And so the biggest part of that is that I think they do, I'd say their close rates are probably upward of 80%, as far as that goes, because they want to help people. They want to like them. They don't want to be seen as bad guys because fees are high or whatever it is. So, and there's not enough of a demand of accountants coming out because of what we talked about. Like it's long-term hard exam, like you got a lot of work to put into it. And it's just not that exciting for kids coming out anymore. So there is a shortage coming, and I'm trying to figure out our system and how we want to work within that for people and to build the team out. And then so I kind of look at our close rate as, okay, if we're closing, over 35-40% of people, like, I really need to take a hard look at pricing and what we're doing, because like that's not what we're meant to do. And that might be a point where we need to revisit. Do we need to increase minimum pricing, going forward, and do some stuff like that? And, to make sure we are where we want to be on things, because that's not our goal. Because if we go too big, like, I'm not trying to grow the largest CPA firm or anything like that. Like, we're trying to stay, kind of nimble and be able to move and to help our actual clients. And so some of that is just making sure we're aware of that and that. But I think, to your point, I think they want to help everyone. They can help everyone. And, they don't like to upset people. I think that's the biggest thing, is they want to be seen as, like, accountants in general are people pleasing, nice people and stuff. And so they take on, and then they take on and take on. And I mean, I can't say I don't run into that myself at times. Like, I find myself all the time being like, man, could I like discount this price for that, or do something to like help them out and things like that. You just want to help people. And that's kind of what led me to REI Tax University now, is I've tried to figure out, like, how can we still help as many people as possible? Like, some of these groups, like the owners and founders of these groups who, what they're doing, like, they're helping all these people. And so they've done a lot for us and me in the last 3 years, like building the firm and getting us people and getting us qualified people in. And I'm like, I want to help them as much as anyone that's a part of them as much as possible. Like, if Adam sends me someone, I want to help them as much as possible, whether in that, I need to separate. Does that mean they're a client, or does that mean, like, we have another spot where we can help them? And to your point, like, it is it is kind of an ancillary marketing piece. Like, that wasn't ever like an intention. The intention is just, selfishly to help people, kind of like that. But it is like, just from a natural, like, seeing it, it also gives me the ability at some point to, if this is a long term, but if at some point it makes sense, someone comes along, we've got tax game plan built up passively, I can run it passively and just be over here. If we need to cut off a part of it, sell a part of it, whoever, there's a lot of that going on right now. So if that ever happens, I can be like, yeah, that's fine, because I built this entire other brand over here and this entire other community and talent and everything that we've got over here that we can keep helping people in what we truly want to do. And then we can get there when we get there. But that's ultimately the goal, is to get as many real estate investors and people helped as possible. And small business owners it works for too. I think I would say overall, like, small business owners in general, it's harder to screw things up sometimes when you're small. Like, and then once you've grown, you kind of are at a point where you should be able to pay the fees that you need to pay for qualified accountants already. Like, so like, that's kind of the big difference I see sometimes, is I'm like, with some of the real estate people, I'm like, you don't need to, this like isn't the best spot to put your money right now. And, but for small business owners, I can usually tell them, like, we weren't the right fit, here it is. And that's kind of why we started with real estate. But, I usually tell people we're good for the mildly successful, or they're at a point where they're comfortable having that level of service.
Yeah. So how do you balance, right? Like, if you talk about let's just call it the barrier in the entry, or like the baseline for the entry, for the industry, is like, just take on as many clients, serve as many people. And like, the expectation is relatively low. Like, we've worked with multiple accountants where it's like, hey, like, if we just get our stuff done on time, like, that's massive. Yeah. So how do you manage that for yourself, where you're like, hey, I can go grow, and like, I can do better than what the baseline is over here, but like, I also know I want to deliver this expectation in a higher standard.
Yeah. And I think that's the point where it's like, I've gotten caught a few times. It's like, you start to, and then that higher standard goes away. And as you grow the team, that starts to go away. So there's times, as what I've realized lately, is like, you're growing the team, and then you got to jump in still. It's like, man, I'm trying to get as much off my plate as I can, but like, at the same time, like, I got to just jump in and knock this out. And, there's a lot there. I think working with coaches is key, and there's probably not a lot of accountants like that think they need to work with a coach, but I think that's key as far as being like, hey, what should I do here? And they're like, well, what you're saying and what your vision isn't aligning with what you're doing every day, and that type of thing. So I think that's a little bit of it, is just saying like, why? And they're like, well, why are you doing that? And where should you have gone there? Because the fight that we have a lot of times is like with these deadlines and things, like, you're so busy that if I'm reviewing a tax return, like, I don't have time to send that back for someone else to update and do, and then review it again. Like, I just got to make the changes and go forward, because we got 2 weeks later, there's a deadline that everyone has to be done by. So that's the fight that we have a lot of times. And I think to your point, it's kind of finding that, hey, there's been times where it's like, hey man, I thought we were getting like this level of experience and expectations, and it doesn't feel like that. I'm like, for the most part, we've been able to handle that, and kind of me jumping back in, making sure that they're good and everything like that. And I can't say it's perfect. I think we still got some team building and some teamwork to do and some things like that. But as far as it goes, generally we've been able to keep people kind of happy as far as that goes, I would say. And usually the ones like each year end when we're, either clients are not going to renew or we're kind of intentionally letting them go type of a thing. It's typically, I'd say more times than not, it's something that what I found now is like I probably should have set expectations better like ahead of time, as far as like, hey, this is what it looks like this year, next year, like each year. Because a lot of times it's like, well, what did we do this year, like tax planning wise? Like, because last year you set up an S corp for me and you did X, Y, and Z, and this year what are we doing? And I'm like, well, in those consulting, remember we talked about like this, and you can maximize deductions and do here, and like we talked about other opportunities you could have, but they don't make sense for you right now. Like, we're not just tax planning at all costs. Like, every year is not a tax planning year, because there's cash flow and financing and other matters to keep track of. And what I found is like, we need the clients who get that.
Yeah.
And some people get that, and some people are more like, what have you done for me lately? Yeah. And it's like, that's not really what we're about. It's more like, we're here to consult, put in the strategies when they make sense for you, and make sure we have a group of advisors who can do that, and we're doing that at all times. So if we have someone come in and they're like, hey, got this big capital gain, I'm looking for options to offset it, I can then connect and be like, here's an alternative investment advisor, here's this, like we've got different oil and gas, here's what you can do. And we're at least there to be like, this is what it does for your tax play, like this is what it does on there, and have those connections and those kind of qualified connections that we have within our own firm to make sure like we are truly serving as advisors.
Yeah. Well, I always tell people as well, is like, kind of very similar to what you're talking about, is like usually the first 90 days with us, and sometimes 6 months, depending upon what service we're doing. Those are like the most intensive ones, because we have so much stuff to clean up, fix, strategize for, etc. And the deliverables over time, they change, but the impact is still based on the first 6 months, or the first 3 months, or whatever. But it's a compound effect of all of those things. It doesn't mean that we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. You just feel so much in that first intermediary thing. But you also have us as a trusted advisor and resource. You want to go try to do even month 6 through 12 on your own, or year 2 on your own. Great. But then you're going to come back asking questions, and you're going to say, well, hey, I need your help this. It's like, no. I always tell people now, is like, hey, this is our entry level fee. So then that way you get a spot on our client roster. Yeah. And if you at any point want to get off, like, of course we can talk about that, but like, don't say, hey, I need you now, and then I don't need you, and I don't, like, because we have plenty of stuff, no different than you have plenty of stuff. And I think that's where a lot of business owners, they are the people pleasers. They are the, hey, I'll do whatever you need, and I'll go and do that. And they bend over backwards, and that client leaves anyway. And then when that client has a problem, they come back and they expect the world, and you just drop everything that you're doing to go take care of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think there's a list of, we've had people like, and that was the, with REI Tax University, there's a place for people to go to be like, hey, you're not a fit now. Because then we've had a couple people that came back like, before we had that, they came back like 6 or 7 months later, like, actually, we did need to use you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, how many more of those people could we capture if we had a place where they were and they were seeing us all the time and things like that? And yeah, I think you're right. It's kind of what I tell people now in that early meeting is like, we're really truly like, if I'm being completely honest with you, like we're looking for at least a 5-year relationship. Mm-hmm. We're not holding you to that. We do 1-year engagements, right? But it's like, that's what we want you to want. And, unless something happens like that we understand, but like, it's like, if you're not looking for that, then it's not going to make sense, because even though there's still a profit margin, if they, each year on that engagement, that profit margin really goes down if they leave in year 2.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, there's just so much. It's almost the same as an employee leaving, right? Like, we've built them up and we've coached you up, and like, we've done all this to like, if you can't really quantify all the intangibles to it, but like, you don't actually need to call me now if you are, traveling for business, because you now know, like we've discussed that, we've done all that. So it's like, I've coached you up, and now that I've kind of freed up this time myself that I don't even realize because of how well we've done for you, like, you know what to do with your vehicle when you go buy it or do, you know, we have these templates that we've given you and stuff. So I think those things are like, it's still like not as effective if you lose a client in year, you know, 2, 3, 4 and stuff like that when you've spent a lot of time with them. So yeah, I think that's kind of what I've realized. So we don't want to, and you know, the other piece I find is we're not a great, you know, we want our clients to think like strategically. I usually tell them like, hey, here's what I want you to think is you're, as a business owner, every dollar out of your pocket, most people think of it as, well, that's personal. That like, that's, you know, I'm doing this or whatever. I'm like, think of it as every dollar out of your pocket that you spend, like it's a business expense, unless it's not, right? Because when you start to think like that, you'll be like, okay, I'm paying for this, what at least Amazon Prime membership. And it's like, okay, is that I'm paying for this Spotify subscription. And then if you think about it hard enough, you'll be like, I do, like I'm using this to listen to podcasts all the time for my business, right? And that's an ordinary and necessary business deduction. And then at the flip side of it, you can think, okay, I'm pulling this out for a haircut. Could that be business? I'm like, if you ask me that question, like you're at least in the line of thinking that I want you to be in. Like, I'm going to tell you no. But like, like that's the line of thinking you should be like there and everything. And that way we can tell you, no, it's not ordinary necessary. It has a personal benefit. And that's kind of the level we want our clients to be thinking on. So again, it's more of a mindset consulting on the ones who get it, kind of get it. But then at the flip side of that, you know, we have people that we've let go that are like, well, I'm trying to lease my portion of the business. And I watch this guy, you know, the influencer, and he tells me I can do it. And he tells me I can do it. And I'm like, listen, like you like it can be done, not in your situation. Here's why. We couldn't defend that. You know, we're not going to do anything that I can't defend in an audit. And like, we can't defend that. And also it's pennies and nickels. Like I'm giving you this strategy over here that you're set up to do that's going to save you 50 or 60 grand this year. And if you want to jump through all these hoops to risk an audit that we can't defend, it's going to save you $3,000. So like, if you want to do that, he's like, well, no, this guy, he said you'd say that. I'm like, then you need to reach out to him.
Then good luck. We're not for us.
So that we have that side too. Like we're not the most aggressive, but we are like, if we're going to be aggressive, I need you to do some things. I'm like, I need you to do your homework. I need you to do everything and have it in order. Like if we're taking, you know, actual on that vehicle, on that truck, I need to be confident that you have your miles tracked, right? Like, and I can pick up on that pretty well. You know, like let's say we can usually tell who does, like the people that send me their notes before the meeting. I'm like, yeah, you're in the 1%. Like if you get audited, I'll happily, like, I'll be ready to go.
That's awesome, man. Well, cool, man. This has been an awesome episode. I appreciate you coming in. Always great chatting with you. And at literally every time we talk, whether it's been the lunch or just going back and forth, or I see your stuff on social media, I'm like, man, it's an interesting way. Even that thing you just talked about the picking up the dollar and talking about, well, is this a business expense and going from there, I think is helpful for anybody that's listening to the episode today. But where can people stay connected with you, learn more about you specifically, as well as your business, REI Tax University, all that stuff? Yeah,
I would say the best place is, so if you want to just join in and follow along with content and stuff, we have a Facebook community, REI Tax University. So jump on, join the Facebook community. We post there daily. We have a YouTube channel you can find through that as well, REI Tax University. And then if you're really interested as either real estate investor, professional, or W-2 who might want to get into it, get your feet wet, reitaxu.com is our community. So you can sign up there. You can do it. There's monthly subscription or annual on that. And then as far as a tax game plan client, that's where you'll find content. And that content kind of overlaps. So even if you're just a small business owner, you know, a lot of it overlaps into that. But if you're interested in becoming a client, you know, you can go to tgpfirm.com and reach out. You can reach me at pgillis@tgpfirm.com, or find us anywhere. Just search Tax Game Plan. And we're based out in Lake St. Louis, Missouri, but we can work with clients nationwide. We do have a couple like offshore, but it's not really our bread and butter. But, you know, if you're someone who's kind of still a U.S. citizen and has that, we can do that too. And so, yeah, that either way, we'd set up an intro call and things like that if we go into client wise, but otherwise just follow along with the content. And I think if you're getting into it, or anyone will be able to find something of value from it.
Yeah, love it, man. Well, thanks for coming in.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. And thank you again to the audience for listening or watching today's episode. If you're listening this on your podcasting platform of choice, make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Making a big push for reviews this year definitely helps move the needle. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, like the video, share something you learned from this episode with Payton, and be sure to continue to support us by sharing all this stuff on social media. Remember, authority isn't built overnight, it's built over time, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode. We sure do appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you consume podcasts. This way you'll get notifications as new episodes become available. If you feel so inclined, please leave us a review. We sure do appreciate it. Until next time, friends.